Hello, hello, good evening, everyone. Okay, so we have I have to take about 9 questions of science and technology. But before I start the discussion, I just wanted to know that how many of you, for example, how many of you are like very new aspirants who have just started their preparation? Few, at least few of you. Very good. Anyways, in science and technology, because science and technology is a very dynamic topic, it's perhaps the most dynamic topic of the entire syllabus. Because it is a dynamic topic, most of the questions are from current affairs. But there are few things which I want to highlight, especially for the mains perspective, because this is fundamentally a discussion about mains examination. And I think it is not just true for science and technology. This strategy can be applied for other topics also. So looking at this syllabus very carefully and having some sort of knowledge about the keywords given in the syllabus itself. So for example, if I have to prepare science and technology for the mains perspective, again I will repeat, I'm only talking about the main strategy. Then in prelims, there is just one line which says that awareness in the field of basic science and technology, which can mean, by the way, anything. So UPSC is not bound by as such anything. In mains also that line is there, but apart from that, there are some specific keywords given in your syllabus. So the very first thing which I should do in science and technology, that I need to be aware about all of those keywords. For example, look at the syllabus, science and technology developments and their applications and effects in everyday life. Now, developments and their applications and effects in how science is affecting us in our day-to-day life. UPSC ने एक direct question ये भी पूछ रखा है. I will come to that question. I have to discuss that question. A simple question that how science is directly, they have picked this line from the syllabus and they have a question that how science affects our day-to-day life, something like this. How is science interwoven deeply with our lives? So preparing syllabus is very important. That is the first thing you are going to do for mains examination. Achievements of Indians in science and technology. Now syllabus was changed in 2013 and in last 10 years only 2 times from this topic questions have been asked. I think one was in 2017, another was in 2018, consecutive years. But nonetheless, it is because given in your syllabus, there are some very important names which you should ideally study, again for mains perspective. Indigenization of technology and developing new technology. Now, indigenization simply means that we are talking about technology, rather than depending upon import from other countries, we want to develop technology in India for Indian requirements, or maybe in future we can become a net exporter. So in this topic, for example, how I am going to prepare this topic, I will first think about that which are the areas in technological domain where we are very much dependent upon imports. For example, think about for our energy requirements, we are dependent upon imports, or for electronics, we are dependent upon imports, or for even we are exporting pharma, but jo active pharmaceutical ingredient hai, we are dependent upon import. So how to indigenize those things, how to develop capability so that we are developing technology in India, and rather than a net importer, we become a net exporter into this particular domain. So that is how I will think about it. So I will think about defense here, I will think about perhaps energy security here, which is again a very important topic, and all other topics where indigenization is very important. And then there are certain keywords given. I definitely need to have a brief understanding of all these keywords, and I definitely should know the application of all those keywords in various domains. So what do I mean by information technology or computers? I can use this together. Space technology, how is that helping us? What are we doing in space technology? There are some other small words, for example, robotics and nanotechnology are small words that a very basic awareness about robotics and nanotechnology can be very helpful. Biotechnology is a very important topic for both prelims and mains examination. And finally, intellectual property rights, that you have to know about IPRs, types of IPRs, IPR related issues, all of those things. So the very first thing which I am going to do for mains preparation in science and technology is I am going to prepare all the keywords given in the syllabus. that I am aware about all of them. What do I mean by all of these keywords? If there is a question from a particular topic, I have a ready-made definition. I have overall a very brief idea about that, what this particular topic means. For example, when I'm saying robotics, what does it mean? Or when I'm saying nanotechnology, what does it mean? And what can be possible applications of these technologies in various areas. तो एक general level पे जो preparation है हर keyword का, वो होना बहुत ज़रूरी है for mains examination. जो अगला जो step होगा, that will now require integration that with current affairs. कि कोई भी topic किसी कारण से news में है, that news in itself is important, but even if that news is not important, the topic becomes important and UPSC is going to ask a question from that topic, right? So I will show you, I have 9 questions. So UPSC asks about 2, minimum they have asked is 2 from Science and Tech in paper 3, only 1 year. Apart from in last 10 years, they have, every year they have asked 3 questions. And 1 साल 4 क्वेश्चन भी आया था, 2 साल 4 क्वेश्चन आया था. जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल in 2022 there were only 2 questions, both were of 15 marks. So out of 250, 30 marks from Science and Tech. In 2021 there were 3 questions, 2 of 15 marks, 1 of 10 marks, so 40 marks. And in 2020 there were 4 questions, 2 of 10 marks and 2 of 15 marks. So you can expect anything from 2 to 4 questions. 4 questions will be about 50 marks, 2 questions will be 30 marks. So 30 to 50 on an average we can think that out of 250, 40 marks तो आएंगे ही साइंस टेक से. एंड सबसे बढ़िया चीज़ ये है that जो क्वेश्चंस होंगे वो बिल्कुल मुश्किल नहीं होंगे. That prelims में चलो लेवल जो है साइंस टेक का ज़्यादा होता है. In prelims you have to go, you have to read about even very basic technology or lot of things. But in mains examination you do not have to do the same. In mains examination, relatively science and technology is much more simpler. It is much easier to prepare this topic for mains perspective. Right, so we are going to see that with the help of questions which UPSC has asked in last 3 years. Let's start with the questions asked in 2022. There were 2 questions in 2022. This was a very expected question. James Webb Space Telescope, it has been covered in news a lot. Launched on 25th December 2021, James Webb Space Telescope has been much in the news since then. What are its unique features which make it superior to its predecessor space telescopes? What are the key goals of the mission? What potential benefit does it hold for the human race? So the first statement is a context. उसमें कुछ question है नहीं, but there are 3 questions that what are its unique features compared to other telescopes? What are the key goals of the mission? And what potential benefits does it hold for the human race? So let's discuss a proper approach that how we can answer this question, right? This question, by the way, जो specially first part है और जो second part है, थोड़ा सा technicality है यहाँ पे, तो जितना ज़्यादा अगर आप technical information लिखोगे, your answer becomes better. It goes without saying. But nonetheless, even if you do not have information about all of the technical information, even then you can write a very well answer. So how I can start? I can simply start with a very basic introduction. Webb telescope, a collaboration between NASA, European Space Agency and Canadian Space Agency. A telescope which was 15 to 20 years in making. Ideally, it was supposed to be launched in 2005 and it has been delayed by 15 years. But because of that delay, in those 15 years, lot of upgradation has occurred. And finally, in 2021, it was launched. Anyways, I do not have to write all of that. Because there are already 3 parts of the question, I will write a very crisp introduction of not more than 20-25 words about the telescope itself. That Webb telescope is a collaboration between NASA, ESA, Canadian Space Agency. It has been launched in 2021. And directly I can jump to the main part of the answer. यहाँ पे introduction में बहुत ज़्यादा हमको time देने की frankly ज़रूरत नहीं है. So what are the main points? Again, this is a question from current affairs. I do not expect same question to be repeated. Perhaps in prelims examination, but not, I don't think that it should be repeated a similar question in mains examination. That does not mean that we should not know about it. So what are the things which you can write? And again, remember, this telescope was very well covered in almost all newspapers, including newspapers of India. So this was a very much well expected question. So there are a lot of parameters which you can cover. By the way, don't forget that there was another keyword in the question, that what are its unique features compared to its predecessor space telescopes. So you also have to write at least some names. Even if you can remember one name is more than enough. If you can remember like 2-3 names, then very well. Jaise Hubble telescope is of course a very famous telescope which we must know. We definitely should write about Hubble telescope. But if you know about, let's say, Chandra X-ray or Herschel Observatory, some other telescopes of NASA, you can write about them also. But even if you are just comparing this with Hubble telescope, that in itself is enough. So Hubble telescope has been a very ambitious telescope launched by NASA. More than 25 years have passed. It has provided beautiful images of the cosmos, the distant stars and galaxies, and nebula region, exoplanets. But Webb telescope is much better than that. So in the introduction, when I have introduced, in the very next paragraph, I can talk about that. I can talk about some of the previous missions of NASA. For example, I can talk about Hubble telescope. I can talk about, in one line, I can simply mention about Chandra X-ray Observatory. In fact, Chandra X-ray is named after Dr. Subramaniam Chandrasekhar, who was an Indian origin scientist. But in terms of the type of equipment, in terms of type of scope, Webb telescope is much more ambitious and much more sophisticated than all the other telescopes. That is how I'm going to start, and I'm going to compare this with certain parameters. Now, I think there are 4 or 5 parameters which you should compare. The very first is size of the telescope. The telescope ke jo mirrors hain, all telescopes fundamentally what they're doing, they have mirrors. Those mirrors are collecting light from distant sources, and by collecting that light, they're creating, developing an image of that particular light source. Now that light source can be a star, it can be a galaxy, or it can be a group of galaxy, a nebula region, whatever. All telescopes are doing that. The only thing is, larger the mirror, more light they will be able to collect, and better information, better images they are going to provide you. So the very first comparison you are going to do is in terms of size, that there are 16 primary mirrors on this telescope. In contrast, Hubble had only one primary mirror. And in terms of diameter, it is more than 2 times, and in terms of area, it is approximately 6 times. So the first comparison I'm going to do is that Hubble, which by the way was a very powerful telescope, it still is active. That jo James Webb Space Telescope hai, in area, it is 6 times larger than Hubble. Six times larger than Hubble telescope. That is the very first parameter I have to write. Larger area simply means that we can collect more and more amount of light, and we can develop better and better images. If you remember, for example, as I told you, that if you remember some technical information here, जैसे Hubble का अगर आपको diameter और Webb का diameter आपको पता हो, so that further enhances the value of your answer. But even if you do not know the exact figure, that is totally fine. That was my point. That even if I do not know the exact figure, I can still write a very good comparative perspective. Now, no, we do not have to. I think even if you have to explain, in one line I can simply say that larger size of telescope means more collection of light and better images. I don't think it has taken a lot of words here. Yeah, ideally you should. Yes. So the question is, that's a very relevant question. In fact, that was my second point, जो आप spectrum की बात करो, that what Webb telescope is observing universe, in which light it is observing. So it is observing universe in infrared light. So your point was that should I write that why infrared light is better? Of course you should. That is why we are comparing Webb telescope with other telescopes. So for example, again I am going to make the same comparison. Chandra is going to observe universe in X-ray. So it is very well equipped to know about X-ray sources. But other sources, it cannot provide me a lot of information. Now Hubble telescope jo hai, it mainly observes universe in ultraviolet light and visible light. Hubble. That is what I am going to write. That this is done by Hubble. The Webb telescope hai, that mainly observes universe in infrared light. So yes, I will have to explain here that why infrared light is better compared to visible light in terms of observation. Infrared light can look beyond the stellar dust, even on Earth. Forget about cosmos. Infrared light is really good. जैसे मान लो कि बहुत सारा एयर पोल्यूशन हो रखा है, बहुत हेज है, विंटर में मान लो स्मॉग हो रखा हो कि पूरा आपको कुछ भी नहीं दिख रहा है, invisible light. If you have infrared sensors, you can look through this entire haze as if there is nothing there. So you can look beyond the dust and pollutant particles even on Earth if you have infrared sensors. Now our eyes cannot look through infrared. Literally they can look only through visible light. Because of that we are calling that light visible light. But we can observe universe into other sources of light, including infrared light. Now infrared light is really good because it can look beyond stellar dust. For example, think about regions where stars are born. Those regions are called nebula region. Now nebula region has a lot of stellar dust, lot of gaseous particles with very high energy. So there are a lot of stars hiding behind that dust. Hubble telescope cannot see that, but Webb telescope can see that. So yes, I will have to write about that, that infrared jo observation hai, it is superior compared to observation in ultraviolet light or visible light because it can look beyond the stellar dust, which by the way Hubble was not able to do that. So yes, I should definitely write that. That is my second comparison. That JWST observes in infrared light, and observing infrared light in infrared light is much better compared to visible light or ultraviolet light. Now third parameter, where is it? Location itself. Here I think I should definitely make a diagram, and in fact I can actually compare with the help of diagram itself that if this is Earth, then Hubble is a earthbound orbit. Hubble is an orbit of about 450 kilometers. It is in low Earth orbit. It is an earthbound orbit. Let's say for example I have Hubble telescope here, which is in low Earth orbit, and that orbit is earthbound. In contrast, the Webb telescope hai, so this is about 450 kilometers. In contrast, the Webb telescope is 1.5 million kilometers away from Earth. I have JWST. And despite the fact that it is 1.5 million kilometers away from Earth, it is into a stable orbit, and that stability is provided by not because of Earth, but because of the combined gravitational effect of both Earth and Sun. We call this point Lagrangian point 2, and we call this orbit halo orbit. So I will have to write that while Hubble telescope is in low Earth orbit, Webb telescope is in an orbit called halo orbit at a point called Lagrangian point 2, and at this Lagrangian point 2, whatever required centripetal force is there, it is not because of just Earth, just Sun, but it is a combined effect of both Earth and Sun. So that is what I have to write in the third point. Now why this is important? ये भी लिखना पड़ेगा कि why this is important. It is important because if let's say for example, Hubble is monitoring deep space, some distant star and galaxy, then as it revolves around Earth, for example, it is changing its position with respect to Earth, फिर भी हम mirror को हम align कर सकते हैं to a particular galaxy, to a particular star. But what if now this part of the sky is somewhere here, and telescope comes behind this Earth. So now Earth is in a way between that particular light source and the telescope. So my telescope cannot look at the light source right now. In contrast, because it is 1.5 million kilometer away, not revolving around Earth, revolving around Sun in fact, so this can look at the deep space without any disturbance from Earth or even Moon, by the way. That Moon का भी distance क्या है? 384,000 kilometer. How far is Moon? 384,000 kilometer. So even Moon cannot create a shadow, Earth cannot create a shadow, Moon cannot create a shadow. They cannot eclipse the telescope. Because they cannot eclipse the telescope, now my telescope can observe a particular part of the sky without any type of disturbance. And still it will be able to send data towards Earth, because remember, it is revolving into Earth-Sun system. It is still revolving around Earth exactly with the same speed as Earth revolves around Sun. So I maintain a perfect alignment with this telescope all the time without Earth creating any type of shadow on it. So that is the third point, and a very important point we are going to write about Webb telescope, that how it is superior to Hubble telescope, or for that matter any other telescope. But this is not the end. If you have seen a picture of Webb telescope, just to give you a context here, now if you have seen a picture of Webb telescope, then this is the mirror part. ये जो mirror है, this is a very large mirror. It can collect lot of data about light sources from distant sky. But the interesting feature is this also. ये जो part आपको दिख रहा है. Now this part is not random. This part actually is sun shield. That if this telescope is revolving around sun, then the mirror is actually looking away from the sun. And this sun shield is also, for example, my mirror is here, and this is sun shield, and sun is always behind it. So my mirror never faces any sunlight. It is never receiving any amount of sunlight. This sun shield is so powerful. It has 5 layers. Every layer is filtering out sunlight. It is so powerful that the temperature in this part of this sun shield is about 80 to 90 degrees Celsius. And temperature where this mirror is located, this part, is about minus 230 degrees Celsius. So 80-90 डिग्री सेल्सियस पे कर थोड़ी देर में वाटर भी बॉयल हो सकता है, 100 डिग्री पे तो वाटर बॉयल हो जाएगा. यहाँ पे आप नाइट्रोजन, हाइड्रोजन, ऑक्सीजन को लिक्विड स्टेट में स्टोर करके रख सकते हो. That is the temperature contrast. Now why it has been done? Why we are creating such a powerful, strong sun shield for this telescope? And there is a very good reason for it. The first reason is we do not want sunlight to affect in any way our observation. But that is not the most important reason. The most important reason is, now explaining this in very short keywords is going to be difficult, so I think it can be skipped. But I should tell you that why we are doing that. Any object, as its temperature increases, it radiates light. Every object radiates light. The only thing is that radiation exists in infrared, and we cannot see that. For example, this mouse here is radiating light. The only thing is that this is infrared light. I cannot see that. It still, temperature does not decrease because it is also receiving light from the surrounding. So objects always radiate light, especially if the temperature keeps on increasing. जैसे जैसे temperature बढ़ेगा, जो भी light ये radiate कर रहे हैं उसका energy बढ़ेगा. Very good example is, I always give this example of steel rod. That steel rod on a heat source. Right now steel rod का खुद का कलर है. बहुत देर तक आप heat source पे रख दो, लाल हो जाएगा. It will start glowing red. Now why it has become glowing red? Because now it is radiating light. Initially it was infrared, I cannot see that, but now it is radiating light of high energy. Red light has more energy than infrared. I can literally see that light. So because of that, my iron has become this glowing red iron. But even when it was not at the heat source, it still was releasing energy. The only thing is that I cannot see that energy. Our eyes are not equipped to look at infrared light. So we do not want mirror's temperature to increase, because if the temperature increase, it is going to radiate light, maybe infrared light, and जो हम light collect कर रहे हैं distant sources से, we do not want mirror's own light to disturb that light collection. So whatever light now mirror is collecting, it is light coming from distant sources. It has nothing to do with mirror's own light. At minus 230 degree Celsius, mirror का जो radiation emission होगा वो करीब करीब negligible है. So we can be assured of this fact that whatever light it has collected and whatever image it is now helping in forming, that is accurate and there is no disturbance from the mirror itself. So it serves two purposes. It protects you from, it does not want sunlight to affect the mirror formation, and it also does not want mirror's own light, infrared light, to affect the image formation. That is why this sun shield is important. This sun shield will be larger than this classroom. This sun shield is as large than a tennis field. The normal lawn tennis का जो field होता है इतना बड़ा है. So this is a very large sun shield which is always protecting my telescope. So that is what I am going to write. Nothing like this exists for Hubble. Does have some sort of sun protection, but इस level का protection नहीं available है. इस level का जो protection है वो किसी के पास available नहीं है. Only instrument, that is Webb telescope, which has this particular protection available. So that is also I am going to write in this particular answer. No, it does not. It cannot. So the question is that can it observe solar flares? The purpose of Webb telescope is to not observe solar flares, right? It still, by the way, one thing it should be very clear that it still does have, for example, it still does have solar panels. Power source तो चाहिए ना? कुछ ना कुछ power source होना तो जरूरी है. So it still does have solar panel. ये जो आप देख रहे हो solar panels है. That it continuously is receiving sunlight. There will be a battery. That battery will be charged with the help of the solar panel so that it can keep collecting data and it can send that data to Earth. That cannot happen without power source. So it is receiving sunlight, but जो mirror है, that is filtering out all the sunlight with the help of this sun shade. ये जो sun shade जो है. So that is my point I am going to write. That how this is different from other type of telescope. Now let's come to the second part of the question, that what are its objectives? That was the question, and how it is going to benefit humanity. What are the key goals of this mission? Now because of all of this capability, the key goals of this particular mission is, so I can directly jump to the key goals, or simply I can write a connecting line also. If I'm transitioning from one part of the answer to another part of the answer, if I can write a connecting line, it's always good. Even if I cannot, totally fine. So I can simply write that because of all these capabilities, the goals or the objectives of Webb telescope are much more ambitious compared to its predecessors. And then I can start writing my answer. Or I can simply give a heading, key goals of Webb telescope, and I can start writing answer. Both are equally fine. इसमें ज़्यादा कुछ वो नहीं है. But key goals जो हैं, the very first key goal is that it can collect light even from the earliest stars and galaxies. We know that, so that is the first point I'm going to write, that it can look at the early stars and galaxies. अब यहाँ पे अगर आप थोड़ा बहुत technical information दोगे, so that is going to be very helpful. That you are going to write that universe is 13.7 billion years old, right? We do know that, but universe was in initial stage was opaque, there was no light. When light started coming, that happened about 300,000 years later. And the first set of stars may have started forming about 700,000 or 100,000 years later. The first set of galaxies may have formed about 2-3 million years later. So Webb can look into that part. When the very first set of stars and galaxies emerged, Webb can look into that. So we are going to write this thing, that Hubble can look into about 13 billion years ago. Webb can look as early as about 13.2 billion years ago. That means that it can actually observe that how the very first set of stars and galaxies may have been formed in this universe, which is very important because we will know that overall जो हमारा cosmology जो हम study करते हैं, that how universe may have evolved, उससे हमको data मिलेगा, and that data is either going to validate our existing theory or it is going to challenge our existing theory. I should tell you that as of now it is challenging our existing theory. That जो अभी existing model है कि how universe may have started and जो web का data है, they are not matching perfectly fine. So it only means that we have to now change our theory, and that is a good thing. That in science, if my experiment, if my data is not validating my theory, that's a good thing because we now have to develop a new theory, right? So web is actually challenging our existing ideas about evolution of universe, and we will have to revise perhaps the models of cosmology. So by the way, in any case, without going into this much technicality, this much detail, we can simply write that Webb telescope can look into the very first stars and galaxies formation, which will help us in understanding that how universe evolved. Similarly, Webb can look at the exoplanets. Now exoplanets are planets outside solar system, but वो तो Hubble भी कर सकता है. However, जो Webb is not just taking pictures, that is very important. Webb has a spectroscopic instrument, that is, it can analyze the light coming from distant sources, and based on that analysis, it can come to a conclusion that what type of elements or what type of molecules are present there. For example, now we know that there is a very famous planet called, I think, WASP 1019b, something like this. In the atmosphere of that particular planet, which is about 500 light years away from Earth, water vapor is present, right? So Webb can not only just take images of exoplanets, it can also tell you with very high accuracy that what type of atmospheric composition we are talking about, and maybe that can be also helpful in answering this question, that is life possible beyond solar system. So that is also something we are going to write about Webb telescope, that it can look to the exoplanets, and not only look to the planets, it can also tell about its atmospheric composition because of the instruments which are part of this particular telescope. Then you can write that forget about exoplanets, it can in fact look at the solar system itself. That जो distant planets हैं, जैसे जो Jovian planets हैं, especially Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, right? Even Pluto, which is not a planet, but Webb can find beautiful pictures of that. For example, I do remember that just last year, Webb had released an image of Jupiter, and not only image of Jupiter with aurora. Now very similar to how Earth has aurora, even Jupiter has aurora. And that we know now because of Webb telescope. So it can not just tell you about distant planets, but also planets of our own solar system. That's some of the unique features. Maybe we will get to know that if life is possible on Mars or Venus, or some moon of Jupiter or some moon of Saturn. जैसे lot of moons of Jupiter are very famous, Ganymede, Callisto, all of these moons are very famous. Lot of scientists think that ideally जो conditions है उसके हिसाब से यहाँ पे हो सकता है life possible हो, water बहुत ज़्यादा amount में available है. So Webb can further refine our knowledge about the moons of other planets and the planets themselves of the solar system. So that is also we can write about its objective. Now let's come to the last part, that how it is going to help humanity. I don't think there is a fixed answer here, but I want your input, that what can be written. Again, I can write a connecting line here, that because of the objectives, because of the technological advancement which has been achieved in Webb telescope, it can help humanity in following ways. I can write this line, or I can simply give a heading that how it can help humanity. So what we can write here? Okay, look for other habitable planet. That is also a very good thing. Maybe in future we'll have to go there. So yes, that's a very valid point, that Webb can help us in finding other habitable planets. Chalo, theek hai. What else? How? Acha, that's also quite ambitious goal. I actually think that we do not even have to talk about such larger things. The very first, for example, that it is going to enhance our knowledge. That in itself is a huge benefit for humanity. Remember that whenever we enhance our knowledge, fundamentally it helps us in developing technology. I again always give such many examples such like this in class. Just say, let me give you the example of MRI machine. MRI machine are the most important diagnostic tools available in hospitals, that without surgery, how you can find the presence or absence of particular disease. Diagnosis में हम use करते हैं ना MRI का, कोई surgery करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है, but फिर भी we can know images of inside of our brain or inside of internal organs. What if I told you that this actually was a result of astronomy? That a scientist, an astrophysicist, who wanted to know about distant stars and galaxies who do not emit visible light. They do emit radio wave, but he wanted to find out that how we can find about why this radio wave and how we can find about this particular radio wave. And he get to this information that even atom के अंदर जो nucleus है, वो nucleus का भी जो पूरा एक frequency है, वो random नहीं है. तो जैसे हम बात करते हैं जब भी स्पेक्ट्रोस्कोपी में we read about electrons, atoms, molecules. But he came to a conclusion that it is not just electrons and atoms and molecules, it is also nucleus which can tell us that what type of element we are talking about. And people thought that if that is true, then we can also use this to tell us that what type of tissues are present or not present inside our body. So MRI was a result of astrophysics. So the very first thing which we can write is that Webb telescope is going to help in advancing our knowledge, and knowledge advancement जो है, that has technological benefits, not maybe perhaps today, but definitely in the future. Second point which you can write is that, as I told you, Webb was envisaged as early as 2005. Finally, it was launched in 2020 or 2021. ये जो 15 साल हैं, उसमें 15 साल में जो इंजीनियरिंग डेवलपमेंट है वो इतना अमेजिंग है. जैसे थिंक अबाउट दिस सन शील्ड मटेरियल, कि सन शील्ड एक ही मटेरियल का बना है, इवन दो टेम्परेचर इज 90 डिग्री सेल्सियस और -230 डिग्री सेल्सियस, उसके बावजूद कोई भी चीज़ों का टेम्परेचर अगर बढ़ेगा कम होगा तो क्या होता है, वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट करेंगे, एक्सपैंड करेंगे. ये मटेरियल ऐसा है कि जिसका कॉन्ट्रैक्शन एक्सपेंशन करीब करीब जीरो है. आई एम नॉट सेइंग दैट इट इज एग्जैक्टली जीरो, बट इट इज वेरी close to zero. So how much development has occurred in material sciences because of Webb telescope, or the fact that the spectroscopic instruments which we have developed for Webb telescope, which can find the presence of water vapor some thousands of years of light years away planet. Now the similar type of spectroscopic instrument we can also use on Earth to do material analysis even with much more efficiency and with much more accuracy. So that is also what we are going to write. तो उसको हम बोलते हैं स्पिन ऑफ टेक्नोलॉजी, कि हमारा वेब टेलीस्कोप का मेन गोल एस्ट्रोनॉमी है, बट उसको डेवलप करने के लिए जो बाकी के टेक्नोलॉजी हमने डेवलप किया है, और वॉट एवर इंजीनियरिंग अचीवमेंट हैज अकर्ड, that can have applications in many more areas. That is how we are going to write that how it can benefit humanity. Or we can also write that how it can inspire people to pursue science and astronomy. Right? I feel inspired. Generally, I am at this age where very few things can inspire me. But when I look at the Webb telescope, I have a very pessimistic orientation towards life. But when I look at the Webb telescope, I get inspired. That when I look at the pictures of nebula or distant planets, right? So, ये भी हम लिख सकते हैं that it can inspire younger generation to pursue astronomy, science and technology, all of those things. So there are many. I don't think, again I will repeat, that जो last part है इसका कोई fixed answer नहीं है. वो आपको तभी के तभी इस टाइप के क्वेश्चंस में तभी के तभी कुछ पॉइंट सोचने पड़ेंगे, लिखना पड़ेगा. बट यस, आई डू थिंक दैट एटलीस्ट 3-4 पॉइंट्स कैन बी रिटन देयर ऑल्सो. दिस क्वेश्चन ऑलरेडी इज अ 3-part क्वेश्चन. जो कंक्लूजन होगा वो बहुत ही जनरल सा कंक्लूजन होगा. मतलब एज सच कुछ ये नहीं है कि कोई बहुत ओपिनियन बेस्ड क्वेश्चन है. हियर यू जस्ट हैव टू नो अबाउट द टेक्नोलॉजी, इट्स एप्लीकेशंस, हाउ इट कैन बेनिफिट ह्यूमैनिटी. That in itself is a conclusion, that how it can help humanity. So if you are writing a conclusion, you can by the way skip it also. In this particular question, you do not have to write conclusion, but if you are writing a conclusion, that is going to be a very general conclusion. That Webb is going to further advance our knowledge, or based on the knowledge collected by Webb, we are going to even develop even more powerful telescopes, or perhaps mysteries of universe will be able to unravel, something like that. So it is going to be a very general conclusion rather than a very specific conclusion, right? So any question in this topic? That is how we are going to answer this question. Let's look at the second question. अब जो second question है, I expected this question in 2021 examination, to be very honest with you. That this was a very expected question in 2021, that how do vaccines work? Simple, a very simple question. Lot of news was there about vaccine development, but again UPSC did not ask in 2021, asked in 2022. ये भी हमेशा बहुत बार रहा है कि कोई चीज़ बहुत न्यूज़ में हो तो उस साल नहीं पूछेंगे, 1-2 साल बाद पूछेंगे. ये प्रीलिम्स में भी होता है और ये मेंस में भी होता है. That whenever students ask me that कितने दिन का करंट अफेयर्स पढ़ें, I tell them कि पिछले साल भर का तो पढ़ो ही पढ़ो. But it should come with a caveat that UPSC has in past asked questions from even 2-year-old news or even more than 2-year-old news. That has also happened, by the way, I should tell you. The only thing is that number of such questions are very less, and because of that we do not have to like अब इसमें तो हम कितना कहाँ तक पढ़े उसका कोई लिमिट तो है नहीं. तो again it is a game of how much input, how much output. So by the way prelims में भी होता है, mains में भी होता है. Anyways, let's look at this question. What is the basic principle behind vaccine development? How do vaccines work? What approaches were adopted by the Indian vaccine manufacturers to produce COVID-19 vaccine? Anyways, जो first second part है वो दोनों एक तरीके से हम साथ में लिख सकते हैं. That first second part, that what is the basic principle? Once I explain the basic principle, I have also explained that how do vaccines work. But what are some other key points which you should write in the second part? I will come to that. But the very first part I can start with a very simple thing. This is a very easy question. I am very sure that all of you can easily write this answer without lot of problem. This is a very simple question, that the fundamental principle behind vaccine is that we are training body's immune system. जो हमारा immune system है बहुत ही well developed system है. Our immune system starts even from our skin. It does not allow a lot of things to go through. When few things do go through, then our immune system has a response which is non-specific in nature. That मान लो आपका क्या होगा, टेम्परेचर बढ़ जाएगा, बुखार लग जाएगा आपको, एक सिंपल सी चीज. That at higher temperature lot of pathogens cannot survive. Maximum bacteria die, lot of bacteria die at around 40 degree, 42 degree Celsius. 65 degree Celsius तक 99% bacteria die, but 65 पे हम नहीं survive करेंगे. So whenever, for example, whenever temperature has increased, that is basically body's response, which when it is fighting infection. The problem is that because of this increase in temperature, that also inhibits other bodily function, and that is why whenever your temperature increases a lot, you should definitely eat medicine to reduce that, because other things are not going to work. So my point is कि even though it is your immune response, but that immune response in itself can be dangerous for you. But anyways, that is a non-specific immune response, that for every type of pathogen, response same hoga. When that also does not work, there are certain bacteria, there are certain viruses that even after that they will be able to survive. Now our body starts producing specific substances, molecules, we call them antibodies. So antibodies are specific to a particular antigen, right? In fact, antigen का मतलब ही होगा कि antigen is anything जिसके against body antibody produce कर सके. So pathogen जो antibody होगा, for every pathogen there will be unique antibody. There will be unique antigen, unique antibody. If that also does not work, we have to eat medicine from outside. We have to further strengthen our antibiotic. हो सकता है बहुत बार आपको खाना पड़े. But the point is that whenever body produces this antibody, body has a memory, it remembers it. Next time when you get infected, then body remembers the structure of the antigen, and based on that structure, what type of antibody has to be produced, body is going to do that, and the pathogen will be neutralized. Once we understood this, that is how our immune system works, once we understood this, we thought that maybe we can replicate it, maybe we can train our immune system. That is how vaccines emerged. So vaccine, how do vaccines work? In simple line, we are going to write that fundamentally vaccines are training our immune response that a particular part of the pathogen or the entire pathogen itself is injected or provided inside our cells so that they cannot make us ill, but still they can elicit an immune response. When that happens, our body knows what type of antibody has to be produced, and when next time you are actually infected, then the similar immune response will be triggered and body is going to neutralize that particular pathogen. ये हमारा पहला line होगा. ये पहले paragraph में हम explain करेंगे that how do vaccines work. We are simply going to write that fundamentally और जैसे इस क्वेश्चन में मुझे लगता है कि बिकॉज क्वेश्चन वाज अबाउट सेकेंड पार्ट में भी दिख ही रहे कि इंडिया का अप्रोच पूछ रहे हैं, तो आप ये भी लिख ही सकते हो दैट बिकॉज ऑफ कोविड-19 जो है, जो पूरा वैक्सीन को लेके एक जो पूरा रेस था, दैट हाउ टू डेवलप वैक्सीन सो दैट वी कैन फाइट दिस पैंडेमिक एज सुन एज पॉसिबल. सो यू कैन गिव सम सॉर्ट ऑफ कॉन्टेक्स्ट फ्रॉम करंट अफेयर्स एंड देन यू कैन जंप टू द वर्किंग ऑफ वैक्सीन. सो मेरे हिसाब से एक बढ़िया जो इंट्रोडक्शन इस क्वेश्चन में हो सकता है दैट कैन बी the development in current affairs which mainly occurred because of COVID-19 pandemic. Write that, then directly jump to vaccine. So fundamentally it is our training our immune response. आप ये बताओगे that जो हमारा specific immune system है that recognizes a particular antigen, and based on that antigen it produces an antibody, and when it does that it also remembers it. ये आप explain करोगे कि हमारा body का immune system का part है. Vaccine uses that principle and it helps in, it basically trains our immune response that without making us ill, how we can elicit an immune response against a particular pathogen. That is the fundamental principle of vaccine. ये हमारा पहला part of answer होगा, which will take about I think 30, 35, 40 words, not more than that. Maximum I guess 50 words. Second part, because second part is separate from the first part, and again remember it is a 15 marker question. तो second part में भी थोड़ा सा आप लिखोगे. तो यहाँ पे second part में for example I think you can talk about various types of vaccine. It does not have to be the entire pathogen. तो आप लिखोगे कि mainly there can be 3 approaches. पहला approach जो होगा कि हम pathogen को use कर रहे हैं, और pathogen को भी हम use करेंगे 2 तरीके से. एक तो हम बोलेंगे live attenuated vaccine. You are going to write that I can have a live attenuated vaccine, which simply means that pathogen has been attenuated, weakened, so that it cannot make us ill, but still body can generate a immune response. Or the second approach can be inactivated vaccine. Where the pathogen will be killed and then that pathogen will be delivered to our body with the help of perhaps some injection so that our body can elicit an immune response. Even with a dead pathogen, body can elicit an immune response. So we'll have to write that. That is the first approach, that we are using the pathogen itself. The second approach is called subunit approach. अब subunit approach में हम क्या करेंगे? We do not use the entire pathogen. We use the part of the pathogen which can help eliciting an immune response inside our body. कि हमको पूरा pathogen की जरूरत भी नहीं है. उसका एक पार्ट है जो कि बॉडी रिकॉग्नाइज करेगा कि दिस इज एन एंटीजन एंड बॉडी विल बेसिकली ट्रिगर एन इम्यून रिस्पॉन्स. जैसे देर आर वेरियस टाइप्स ऑफ वैक्सीन्स बेस्ड ऑन दैट. आई कैन हैव अ recombinant vaccine, or I can have, let's say, a conjugate vaccine or toxoid vaccine, something like this. Without going into details of all of that, you just have to define in one line that while in the first approach, we used the entire pathogen either in attenuated or killed version. In the second approach, we do not have to use the entire pathogen. We only have to use a part of it, which is enough to trigger an immune response. And you can give this example, conjugate vaccine or recombinant vaccine. The third approach you should definitely write, which was in news a lot, which is called nucleic acid approach, that you can have a vaccine called RNA or DNA vaccine. That in this, I do not have to use pathogen or part of pathogen. However, I have to recognize that pathogen का कोई part होगा, कोई प्रोटीन है उसका. जैसे मान लो कोरोना वायरस के केस में, कोरोना वायरस का जो स्ट्रक्चर है, this structure, it is called corona because of this crown like structure. तो ये जो प्रोटीन्स हैं, these are called spike proteins, एक कांटे की तरह निकले हुए हैं. Because of this spike protein, it can easily infect body. So the purpose of RNA molecule is to make protein, right? DNA knows that what type of protein has to be made. It first develops an RNA, and RNA leads to synthesis of protein, right? So what we do here is that we have to develop an RNA molecule, if it is an RNA vaccine, which is coded for a particular protein, and that protein belongs to this particular pathogen. Once this vaccine is injected or delivered to our body, then it is going to make that particular protein inside our cell. Our body immediately recognizes this as a antigen, it develops an antibody, and that is how we are training it. In DNA, बस एक step बढ़ जाएगा, that when DNA vaccine will be delivered, first it will lead to formation of RNA, then a particular pathogen, but again the response mechanism will be same. तो ये भी आप लिख सकते हो एक लाइन में, that for COVID-19, जैसे US में we actually are using nucleic acid vaccine. So that is my second part. First part was what was the principle, how do they work? You can talk about that they can work in various ways. Either I can use the entire pathogen or parts of it or even nucleic acid. And third part, that what has been the approach adopted by Government of India for vaccine development against COVID-19. There are two things which you definitely have to write, Covishield and Covaxin. तो आप लिख सकते हो. पहले तो आप थोड़ा बहुत तारीफ कर सकते हो गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया की. यू कैन डू दैट इन दिस केस, दैट यू कैन राइट इट दैट डिस्पाइट दिस रेस अगेंस्ट पैंडेमिक, we have approved 2 vaccines in matter of 1.5 years after the onset of pandemic, and those 2 vaccines have played a very important role in tackling the overall growth of pandemic, right? तो ये आप लिख सकते हो थोड़ा बहुत. You can give a context and you can directly talk about the first vaccine was Covishield and the second vaccine was Covaxin, but you do not have to just write their names, you actually have to explain them. जैसे जो Covishield है, that is first of all not an Indian vaccine, that is a vaccine आपको लिखना पड़ेगा that it was developed by Oxford AstraZeneca. It is an Indian variant of the vaccine developed by Oxford AstraZeneca, which was produced by Serum Institute of India. आप ये लिखोगे, and then you are also going to write, if you want more marks, you are also going to write that fundamentally, even though it is a live attenuated vaccine, it actually does not use coronavirus. It uses another virus called adenovirus. So adenovirus है, it infects lot of animals, for example donkeys and horses. Adenovirus is not same as coronavirus. So what we take is that we take adenovirus first, we do genetic modification, and by genetic modification we add the spike protein on adenovirus. So we actually haven't used coronavirus, we have used adenovirus. Then using genetic modification we have encoded the spiked protein, the same spiked protein which coronavirus contains, and now Covishield will be injected 2 doses, आप लिखोगे in 2 doses, and body can elicit an immune response. तो ये आपका पहला point होगा. In Covaxin you will write this is an indigenous vaccine developed by Bharat Biotech. Now this is an example of inactivated vaccine and inactivated form of coronavirus itself. No longer it is adenovirus, but coronavirus itself. So it is SARS-CoV-2, which is coronavirus, and using SARS-CoV-2, in inactivated form. Covaxin was developed by Bharat Biotech, which is, by the way, an indigenous vaccine. You can also talk about in the conclusion that Sputnik 5 was also given, but Sputnik 5 was not as such manufactured in India. Sputnik 5 we imported from Russia. So ये आप लिख सकते हो in your conclusion, or you can also talk about perhaps in the conclusion that how US and other countries adopted a different approach. For example, US became the first country to approve vaccines for coronavirus. That was a RNA vaccine developed by Pfizer. तो आप ये भी लिख सकते हो. So all of conclusion can be anything, or you can simply talk about that because of these vaccines, how we have been able to overcome pandemic in a very short span of time. So something like this you can write. Any question? Okay, so okay, ठीक है, that's a very valid question, but I will be very careful here. That the question is that every scientific mission which is covered in newspaper, should we expect a question of such detail in mains examination? My short answer is no. If it is not an ISRO's mission, if it is an ISRO's mission, then yes, definitely you should know and read about all the details. But at the same time, Webb telescope, जो NASA के mission होंगे, जो Europe के missions होंगे, even if you know the basic objectives of it, it can be very helpful, right? And even with very basic objective, if there is a question in mains examination, I think you can write a sufficient answer. But there will be few missions because of I remember saying this to students that I ask you that remember NASA European mission and all those missions or prelims, but ये mains के लिए पढ़ के जाओ. Because of the ambition, because of the technology involved into it. जैसे, just to give you a context, if I have to know about one more mission of NASA, for the mains perspective, I will know about Artemis mission. Apart from Webb telescope, Artemis is a very ambitious mission. But NASA के ऐसे बहुत सारे missions हैं जो खाली prelims के लिए भी अगर मुझे याद हो, so that is more than enough. But ISRO के जो भी missions हैं वो हमको detail में पता होना चाहिए, right? So I will be very careful in going into such depths of each and every mission of NASA or European Space Agency. ISRO all missions in depth. NASA के जो कुछ missions होंगे या यूरोप के जो कुछ missions होंगे वो आपको पढ़ के ही पता चल जाएगा. Because of the ambition involved into it, because of the coverage it is given into newspaper, I should definitely know more about them. DART mission is something else which again I should know more about that particular mission, right? So let's discuss few questions of the 2021. 3 questions here. What are the research and development achievements in applied biotechnology? How will these achievements help to uplift the poorer section of the society? There are 2 parts of the question, but I think because both of these parts are very much integrated with each other, I don't think I have to write this answer into 2 parts. Again, ये आपका बिल्कुल आपका call है. I think there are 2 ways I can write this answer. The first way is that in the first part I have talked about what are the fields of applied biotechnology, and in second part I am explaining that how it can help uplifting the poorer section of the society. Or I can combine both of them together. That whenever I'm explaining the applied areas of biotechnology, in the same point in next paragraph, I also explain that how it can help poorer section of the society. So rather than writing this answer into 2 distinct parts, I can write this just in 1 part. But however, if I'm writing this in 1 part, then every area, it should be very clear to examiner that in every point I am discussing, first I am explaining and then I am also explaining that how it can help poorer section of the society. ये दोनों हर जगह दिखना चाहिए हमको. जैसे, let's start with, for example, a very simple introduction can be such type of technical topic. Just explain biotechnology. Just talk about what do you mean by the term biotechnology. Nothing but applications of biological organisms, cells, tissues, or even biological processes. Does not have to be cells, tissues, but biological processes. But the question is about applied biotechnology. So that is, what do I mean by that? We are not just talking about the scientific research which is happening in labs. as just scientific curiosity. I'm talking about those areas which already has applications in our day-to-day life. So we have to focus upon those areas, and that is how we are going to write few answers. So for example, I think there are many examples. तो पहले तो आप in this question, 2021 के questions हैं, you can briefly talk about biotechnology, not in lot of detail. Question का बिल्कुल focus नहीं है, just to write an introduction in 20-25 words, not more than that. Just briefly talk about biotechnology itself. Directly jump to that some of the areas of applied biotechnology. For example, on the top of my mind, I can think of some areas. The very first can be, let's say, genetically modified crops. That is the first thing I can talk about, GM crops, that with the help of genetic modification techniques, we can develop crops with more productivity, which can resist pests or insect attack, right? Or they can also, by the way, sustain environmental stress. For example, we can have crop productivity even during drought or salinity, something like this. So that is the first point we can write, that how it is an applied field of biotechnology, we are already using it. इंडिया में भी आप बेटी कॉटन का एग्जांपल ले सकते हो. यू कैन ऑल्सो टॉक अबाउट दैट हाउ मेनी मोर क्रॉप्स आर अंडर ट्रायल. सबसे फेमस जो है मस्टर्ड का एग्जांपल आप ले सकते हो, जो जीएम मस्टर्ड है, दैट कैन बी वेरी गुड एग्जांपल. नाउ इन द सेम पॉइंट आई कैन ऑल्सो टॉक अबाउट दैट हाउ इट कैन हेल्प द पुअरर सेक्शन ऑफ द सोसाइटी. Increased productivity directly increases the income of farmers, right? We also can talk about that how, because of climate change, we have to find solutions, we have to find those crops which can sustain environmental stress. So you can also say that how small and marginal farmers are even more vulnerable because of climate change, and maybe gene modification technique can help in reducing that vulnerability. So in the very first part, so that is, again I will repeat, that I could have explained that in the second part of my answer, or I could write both of them together. So I will explain GM crops and their benefits, explain them benefits, and then in the same point, however, in the next paragraph, I am going to talk about their benefits, that how it can help poorer section of the society. Another point which I can talk about, I think, is biofuels is a very good example. Think about biofuels. This is also an area of applied biotechnology, that no longer we have to rely upon fossil fuel, or even if we are relying upon fossil fuel, we can reduce that dependence. I'm not saying that we can eliminate it, but we can definitely reduce that dependence, that we can produce ethanol, or we can produce biodiesel from food crops, or even non-food crops, or even from genetically modified algae. हम algae से भी बना सकते हैं. And those biofuels, they reduce our carbon footprint. They also, for a country like India, they reduce our current account deficit, that हमको बाहर से पेट्रोलियम जो प्रोडक्ट है वो बहुत ज़्यादा खरीदने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. How it can help poorer section of the society, that is also there. You can talk about that how in general it can be helpful for energy security, or how government can incentivize production of biofuel into this country. Just say, think about that as of now there is minimum support price for lot of non-food crops which are used for biofuel production. Lot of oil seeds और जेट्रोफा, तो बहुत सारी चीज़ें जिसको हम एक्चुअली यूज़ करते हैं बायोफ्यूल बनाने के लिए. Government has a minimum support price regime for it, very similar to how we have MSP for wheat or rice or other crops. तो आप ये लिख सकते हो. And the best part here is कि ये जो non-food crops which I am talking about, they do not require lot of agricultural input. They are not as intensive as our food crops. तो कम इनपुट में हम एक बिल्कुल guaranteed price हम ले सकते हैं by selling it to government or government agencies. That can help again farmers. Or in general, energy security is beneficial for the entire nation, including the poorer section of the society. So that is also something we can talk about. Huh. Very good point. So that is also very good point, that we do not just have to talk about the carbon footprint. We can also talk about the reduction of air pollution. That biofuels, they definitely do reduce some type of pollutants, not all of them. I should tell you that ऐसा नहीं है कि biofuels reduce all type of pollutant, but some type of pollutants definitely get reduced with the use of biofuels. So yes, we can talk about that also. And air pollution, we do know all environmental problems, they affect poorer section of the society much more than the richer section of the society. That poorer people are more vulnerable to environmental issues compared to rich of the society. Right? हम जैसे for example air purifier लगा सकते हैं, हम AC में बैठ सकते हैं, लेकिन lot of people cannot afford that. So that is how we can talk about that. Yes, air pollution वाला जो point है, that is also a very valid point. Think of more areas. Fortification. That's a very good point. Now, fortification is a strategy where we add micronutrients to crops. अब एक तरीका तो ये है कि हमने क्रॉप डेवलप करके फिर उसमें माइक्रोन्यूट्रिएंट ऐड किया, बट दूसरा तरीका ये है दैट यूजिंग जेनेटिकली मॉडिफाइड टेक्निक्स वी आर डेवलपिंग अ क्रॉप वेराइटी विच ऑलरेडी हैज माइक्रोन्यूट्रिएंट्स. जैसे नॉर्मली जो हमारा स्टेपल डाइट होता है, राइस जैसे ले लेते हैं, राइस इज आवर स्टेपल डाइट ऑल अक्रॉस द वर्ल्ड, राइस इज ईटन. Rice does not have lot of micronutrient, almost non-existent. Rice has lot of carb, but does not have micronutrients as such. So there are researchers who are developing varieties of rice where it already has some vitamins. Just say, if you have some example, I remember at least one example, golden rice, which already has vitamin A in it. So we can talk about it, and that is the first part, and how it can help poorer section of the society, nutritional security. So no longer it is just about food security. Food security में क्या होगा, आपने rice wheat दे दिया, but it is not just about food security. It is also about that you are eating a balanced diet, and balanced diet does not just include eating proteins and fats and carbs. It also includes taking micronutrient. तो सबसे बढ़िया तरीका तो ऑफ कोर्स ये है कि आप फ्रूट्स वेजिटेबल्स खाओ, बट अगर आप फ्रूट्स वेजिटेबल्स नहीं खा पा रहे हो या नहीं अफोर्ड कर पा रहे हो, then you can definitely adopt the fortification strategy. So that is something we can write in the how it can help poorer section of the society. We can also talk about, let's say, bioremediation. That is also something which is very important. अब देखो बायोरेमिडिएशन क्या है. वी आर यूजिंग माइक्रोबियल ऑर्गेनिजम्स सच एज बैक्टीरियाज टू डिग्रेड डिकम्पोज हार्मफुल पॉल्यूटेंट्स. अब इसमें आप तो पहले बताओगे कि लॉट ऑफ बैक्टीरियाज दे कैन डिग्रेड हार्मफुल पॉल्यूटेंट्स. देर आर बैक्टीरियाज विच कैन डिग्रेड पेट्रोलियम प्रोडक्ट, ऑयल स्पिल प्रॉब्लम को हम ठीक कर सकते हैं. देर आर बैक्टीरियाज विच हैव बीन प्रूवन टू डिग्रेड इवन सम टाइप्स ऑफ प्लास्टिक हार्मफुल पॉल्यूटेंट्स. तो ये तो आप एक लाइन में एक्सप्लेन करोगे दैट व्हाट इज बायोरेमिडिएशन. नाउ हाउ इट कैन हेल्प द पुअर सेक्शन ऑफ द सोसाइटी. थिंक अबाउट द चैलेंज ऑफ सॉलिड वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट. दैट सॉलिड वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट जो है, हाउ सीरियस दैट ऑफ एन इशू इज, एंड पीपल अगेन हु आर अफेक्टेड बाय दिस चैलेंजेस आर द पुअर सेक्शन ऑफ द society. So if we are using environmental friendly techniques to take care of such harmful pollutants, what better than this can be. So this is also an area of applied biotechnology which is very, very beneficial for overall environmental sustainability, and definitely it can help the vulnerable section of the society. What can be some other areas? Sorry? Vaccine development. That's such a good point. We can talk about vaccines. With understanding of biological processes, we have now developed so many types of vaccines against various types of diseases, right? तो again ये भी this is an field of applied biotechnology. And second part बहुत आसान है explain करना, that think about how many people used to die or used to suffer because of various types of polio का भी example ले सकते हो, that there were so many polio cases. No longer India is as of now polio free. As of now vaccine मलेरिया के लिए वैक्सीन अप्रूव हो चुका है, टाइफाइड के लिए वैक्सीन अप्रूव हो चुका है, डेंगू के लिए भी वेरी श्योर हो सकता है कि फ्यूचर में इंडिया में वैक्सीन अप्रूव हो जाए. सो लॉट ऑफ दिस डिजीजेस विच हैव अगेन they cause lot of issues overall to the population, but definitely poorer people suffer more because of these diseases, and vaccine research can help in tackling such issues. So that is also something we can write, right? So there are many more areas. If you can think of more areas, as many as areas, definitely write that. Just take care of the word limit, that you do not have to exceed word limit part of it. All questions are curious, anyways. Got it. So can we tackle this issue with the help of biotechnology? That is your question, right? So let me first explain the question. The question is that in a lot of areas, and it is not especially specific to Eastern UP or Bihar, but in many parts of this country, what we are witnessing, that the concentration of harmful pollutants such as arsenic or nickel or even uranium, that is only increasing, fluoride also. And that mainly is occurring because of water resources. जो हम water consume कर रहे हैं, that is becoming more and more polluted. So can we use biotechnology to tackle this issue? As of now, those technologies, for example, the one way which I can think of, that biological treatment of water, right? Biological treatment of, let's say, groundwater. We will have to find solutions that those biological treatments are actually able to remove those pollutants first. Second, they are economically efficient, and third, they are not causing any type of side effects. So theoretically, the question to your answer is yes, we can do that. Now, how feasible that is, I frankly do not know. But if I have to guess, I don't think it is very feasible. Again, this is just my guess. I haven't done any research here. But if I have to guess, it is not very feasible that how to treat groundwater with the help of, let's say, bacteria, ensuring that it is cost efficient and does not have side effect, can be problematic. A better solution can be using filtration method, that you are using some sort of filtration, let's say, does not have to be reverse osmosis, but definitely some other type of filtration technique where we can remove such type of pollutants, right? But theoretically the answer is yes, we can use biotechnological solutions to such problems. Any other question? Yes, we can definitely write that. So the question is, as one of the point can be how so in recycle and recovery of things, we can use biotechnology, again the decomposition of bacteria themselves, and that can help in circular economy and environmental sustainability. Yes, definitely you can do that. Definitely, any paper. ये बहुत clear होना चाहिए कि ये जो environmental sustainability या circular economy ये जो words हैं, ये कोई पेपर स्पेसिफिक नहीं है, ये बस खाली मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री में मत लिख के आना, बाकी आप हर लिख सकते हो, आप इवन इथिक्स में लिख के आ सकते हो अबाउट इन्वायरमेंटल सस्टेनेबिलिटी इफ इट इज अ कॉन्टेक्चुअल क्वेश्चन. सो ये एज अ कीवर्ड एज सच कोई बार नहीं है कि जस्ट पेपर 3 में है तो खाली हम लिखेंगे, बाकी जगह नहीं लिख सकते. हाँ हाँ, अभी मैंने पूरा पॉइंट ही मेरा यही था कि मेरे हिसाब से दोनों ही अप्रोच ठीक है. मैं अगर मुझे आंसर लिखना हो तो मैं दोनों को साथ में लिखूंगा, बिकॉज दोनों क्वेश्चन एज सच बहुत ज्यादा डिस्टिंक्ट नहीं है एक दूसरे से. दो क्वेश्चन है बट दोनों ही एक दूसरे पे बहुत ज्यादा डिपेंडेंट है. देखो वैसे तो पूरे क्वेश्चन का एक थीम तो होता ही है, कॉमन थीम, हर क्वेश्चन का एक कोई कॉमन थीम होता है, बट इवन विद इन दैट वन कॉमन थीम आई कैन फाइंड दैट आई शुड राइट सेपरेट आंसर. जैसे वेब टेलीस्कोप वाला था, 3 अलग अलग चीजें थी, पहले टेलीस्कोप से कैसे अलग है, ऑब्जेक्टिव्स क्या हैं, ह्यूमैनिटी के लिए क्या बेनिफिट है, तो तीनों को हम अलग अलग ही लिख पाएंगे. इस क्वेश्चन में आई डोंट थिंक वी हैव टू डू दैट. दैट वाज व्हेन आई स्टार्टेड, दैट वाज माय पॉइंट. दैट देखो पहला क्वेश्चन है, व्हाट आर द रिसर्च एंड डेवलपमेंट अचीवमेंट्स इन अप्लाइड बायोटेक्नोलॉजी एंड हाउ विल दीज अचीवमेंट्स हेल्प टू अपलिफ्ट द poorer section of the society. The second question is emanating from the first question itself. Because of that, if I have to write this answer, I will explain the applied biotechnology part, and I will jump to in the same but in the next paragraph that how it is helping poorer section of the society. But nonetheless, it is totally up to you. Even if you are making it in like 2 parts of the answer, that is totally fine. I don't think there is any type of one approach is better or another approach is better, right? अब ये जो क्वेश्चन है ना, दिस वाज अ वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग क्वेश्चन. आई शुड टेल यू, अब ये जो नोबेल प्राइज है 2014 का है, क्वेश्चन आया है 2021 में. डज दैट मीन दैट आई शुड नो एन नोबेल प्राइज ऑफ 2013, 12 सबका 2023 के एग्जाम के लिए? नॉट एट ऑल. देयर इज अ वेरी गुड रीजन why this question was asked. One of the Nobel laureates, in fact the very first one, Akasaki had died the same year. In the month of April, Akasaki had died. His death was covered by all the newspapers, including the Hindu and Indian Express. And when his death was covered, it was also mentioned that he was a Nobel laureate who got Nobel Prize for discovery of blue LED. So there was a very good reason UPSC did ask this question. This was a question of current affairs, not because it was in news in 2014, but it was actually in news in 2021 itself. Let me explain this. This is also one of those Nobel Prizes in physics which has lot of applications as of now and which can also be explained into very simple terms without going into a lot of technicality. Now LED is a very important source of light. Fundamentally it uses, for example, it can use semiconductor diodes, and LED light of a particular frequency, particular wavelength can be emitted. The best part is that when LED light is emitted, it is much more energy efficient compared to other types of light. So LED light in general is very helpful. Now let me give you the context that why these three scientists were given this Nobel Prize. LED light is useful, ये बहुत पहले से clear था, सबको clear था, ये 1970-80 में clear था कि LED light is very useful. In fact, two LED lights were already discovered, red LED light and green LED light. But even before this, all of us know that जो primary colors हैं वो red, blue, green है. Red, blue, green को अगर हम equal proportion में मिलाएंगे, I will get this white color, right? अगर हम unequal proportion में मिलाएंगे, जैसे few red, more green, less blue, then I can produce a different color. In fact, I can produce any color with the help of just three color, red, blue and green. जैसे एक सिंपल सा एग्जांपल ले लो कि अगर ये LED बल्ब है, अगर मैं इसका हटाऊंगा पहला लेयर, तो I will actually find the red, blue, green LED here, and all of that red, blue, green is illuminating with the same intensity. Because of that I am going to get this white light. In contrast, अगर आपके पास मान लो घर में LED TV है, अगर आप फ्रंट पैनल हटाओगे वहां पे भी आपको LED दिखेगा, वो भी आपको रेड ब्लू ग्रीन दिखेगा. द ओनली थिंग इज कि ये जो रेड ब्लू ग्रीन है, इट इज नाउ इमिनेटिंग डिफरेंट मिक्सचर्स ऑफ the composition of red, blue, green, and because of this different mixture, you can have this beautiful contrast of color on your screen. LED TVs, they have the best display technology compared to, let's say, previous technology which was LCD, right? So ये जो सबसे बड़ा जो challenge ये था that people had discovered that how to produce red LED light, green LED light, but producing blue LED light, because blue LED has higher frequency, lesser wavelength, so producing this higher blue का जो frequency है red और green के comparison में ज़्यादा है, that was proving to be more challenging. These three group of scientists contributed to that. So पहले तो आपको बस background में जैसे if I have to write this answer, in introduction I will write briefly about LED. I will talk about that how before blue LED, red and green LED light were discovered, but scientists were not able to find an economically efficient technique how to produce blue LED light. And these three group of scientists did exactly that. Once that happened, now there was no turning back. It has applications in so many different type of areas. The very first is production of white LED. सबसे important कि जो भी हमारे ये जो पुराने CFL bulbs थे, जो ये luminescent bulb जो थे, जो tungsten filament के बने हुए हैं, they are not energy efficient at all. They consume huge amount of energy. They have very short lifespan. In contrast, LED consumes about 1/3 of light, and it has a more lifetime. There are very few technologies which can claim that they are more energy efficient and more lifetime. So LED bulbs जो हैं, they are better because they consume less energy. So with LED, the question is, पहला context नहीं दे रखा है कि was jointly awarded for the invention of blue LEDs in 1990s. How has this invention impacted the everyday life of human being? And ये 250 word का 15 mark का question है. So there are lots of application. The first application I am going to write is about energy efficiency. That we have been able to produce energy efficient bulbs now, energy efficient light sources now, and those energy efficient light sources, they have fundamentally reduced our power consumption, and they have helped tackling in environmental problem. That will be my second point now. First point I am going to write, So I will give an introduction, a brief introduction. I will talk about if I have this information. Again, I have this information because I remember this teaching in 2015. तो तब तो न्यूज़ में था, अब 2021 में मुझे पढ़ाने की कोई ज़रूरत नहीं है. But even if you do not have this information, even then I think because it was covered, you could have talked about the death of Nobel laureate himself, or you could have directly jumped to the benefits of blue LED. That is also totally fine. Or you could have simply defined light emitting diodes, what they are, and you could have talked about the benefits of blue LED. So the very first is that we were able to produce energy efficient bulbs. In general, it worked for energy efficiency, that we were able to reduce our power consumption. And second, इसी से जो follow करेगा, second point which I am going to write, I will talk about environmental sustainability. Here I will explain that how, because of our energy consumption or energy requirements, how much we burn fossil fuel, coal and petroleum. With the help of LED, now we are burning less of fossil fuel. Simple. So that has overall reduced our carbon footprint. So that is my second point I am going to talk about. The third point I am going to talk about, that will be very important in display technology. जो पूरा display है, that has revolutionized because of LED. Again, LED is more energy efficient in terms of display, and it also provides you better contrast of color. The question was how we are using it in our day-to-day life. So we are using in our day-to-day life in our LED TVs, that without blue light, we still would have used LCD, which had a shorter lifespan, which was consumed more energy, and did not provide better color contrast. All of those problems I have reduced, or I have eliminated with the help of LED TV. I have better contrast, more lifetime, and also my power consumption hasn't increased a lot. In fact, it has reduced compared to our earlier televisions. So that is how we are going to talk about how it has helped in display technology, but not how it helped in optical storage. अब तो हम use नहीं करते, but think about जो CD होता था, पता नहीं आप लोगों ने use करा या नहीं, compact discs, जो CD हम use करते थे फिल्मों के लिए, उसी CD में एक नया Blu-ray disc आया. That Blu-ray disc, how many of you know about Blu-ray disc? All of you, सबने, ठीक है. So जो अब चूंकि हमको जरूरत नहीं है ये ऑप्टिकल स्टोरेज की, इस मेथड को हम बोलते हैं ऑप्टिकल स्टोरेज, दैट वी हैव डेटा स्टोर्ड ऑन अ CD. बट CD पे जो डेटा स्टोर्ड था उसका क्वालिटी बहुत अच्छा नहीं था. दैट क्वालिटी फर्दर इंप्रूव्ड इनटू ब्लू-रे डिस्क. ये जो अभी हम हाई डेफिनेशन वीडियोस जो हम आराम से पेन ड्राइव में स्टोर कर सकते हैं, फ्यू ईयर्स एगो, इनफैक्ट 10 years ago, not even very far away, 10 years ago अगर आपको high definition video चाहिए, so you needed a Blu-ray disc. Blu-ray disc has all this high resolution 1080p जो resolution की हम बात करते हैं, that was possible, that would have not have been possible without blue LED. So that is also what we are going to talk about. We are also going to talk about that how blue LED has helped in a lot of medical applications. LED light in general has actually developed our diagnostic tools, that the type light plays a very important role in both diagnosis and treatment. With the help of blue LED, now that we can produce this high frequency light, it can be very helpful in diagnosis as well as treatment of some type of diseases. So we can also talk about medical applications, that how blue LED light has been very useful for medical applications. So there are many ways. I think explaining all of those points in more detail and comparing that with the previous or older technologies, I can easily write 250 words here in explaining all of that. So this question, even though it was unusual because it asked a topic, a Nobel Prize in Physics in 2014, but I will repeat, there was a context here. This death of one of the Nobel laureates was covered. He died at the age of 92. And it was covered all across the world, including in India, and because of that UPSC did ask this question, right? This question, the first time they have asked a question from defense in mains examination. Prelims में बहुत बार पूछा है, but syllabus change होने के बाद पहला question जो defense technology से था in mains, it was this question. How is S-400 air defense system technically superior to any other system presently available in the world? This question they directly picked from Indian Express का explained एक आया था. Indian Express का आता है ना explained page. They had talked about S400 system, its benefits, and they had also compared S400 system with the existing air defense system of the world. But pick वहाँ से करा है, but there was a reason why Indian Express had covered this system into much more detail. The first reason is of course very obvious. We are buying it from Russia. सबसे पहले तो ये पता ही होना चाहिए that S400 system we are importing from Russia. Few batches already have been delivered. More batches will be delivered very soon. That is the first thing. But that is not the only reason why this topic was covered so well into newspaper. There is an act in US called CAATSA Act, and as per CAATSA Act, if any country is dealing with adversaries of US, enemy countries of US, who are those enemy countries? Russia, North Korea, Iran. So if you are dealing with these adversary countries, then there can be economic sanctions imposed upon you. But US ये भी कोशिश कर रही है कि इंडिया के साथ उसका रिलेशन अच्छा हो. They think that India can play a very important role in countering China, especially in the Asia Pacific region. So they cannot put sanctions on India as such. So there was a debate going on in US House of Senate every day that should we impose sanctions on India or should we have some sort of leeway given to India. And finally, the lawmakers agreed that India should be given a leeway, not in perpetuity, but India has its own defense requirement because we have Pakistan, China, and we need to have a sophisticated weapon system. So finally, they decided that for few years, this economic sanction does not have to be provided. So anyways, that was the context. Every day this debate was going on. Every day newspapers were covering that this lawmaker said this lawmaker said that. And Indian Express had this detailed coverage where they provided a comparative perspective with other type of systems. So let me tell you, this is also one of those questions where we can make figures. I do think we can make figures. How is S400 system superior to other air defense system? तो सबसे पहले तो air defense system का purpose क्या होता है? I can talk about that only. That I will say that air defense system aims to intercept any type of incoming threat and it aims to neutralize that threat in the air itself. Simple. That is the purpose of air defense. That threat can be an incoming fighter jet, it can be an incoming missile, it can be an incoming drone or anything like that. So any type of aerial threat, the purpose of air defense system is that it can intercept it and now it can neutralize it, right? That is how we can start our answer. If we have to, because the question is also asking that you have to provide a comparative perspective with other defense system, even if you know few names, and I do think that there was one more air defense system which was in news a lot, the same year was Iron Dome of Israel, yes. So Iron Dome of Israel was in news a lot. So even if I haven't read that particular explained page of Indian Express, Iron Dome was in news a lot. That is an Israeli air defense system. It was in news because a lot of missiles were fired from Gaza Strip. There was a very famous picture that how Iron Drone system is intercepting a lot of those missiles and neutralizing them simultaneously. There is another air defense system which often remains in news, THAAD system. Very good. So the THAAD system here, this US has installed at border of South Korea, especially to defend South Korean border with weapons of North Korea. Or US has its own air defense system called Patriot system. So there are a lot of air defense systems in this world. S-400 is one of the most superior air defense system that I have to explain in the second part. So in the first part, talk about air defense system in itself, talk about some of the most prominent air defense systems of the world, and then jump to the second part, that how S-400 is superior. So it is superior because, first thing first, S-400 provides you a 4-tier protection. This 4-tier protection involves that it can intercept a target as far as 300 km away or as close as about 30 to 50 km away. So it will try to intercept at 300, 200, 150, and it can, by intercepting, it can neutralize it also. So it is a 4-tier protection mechanism. Multi-layered protection is available in S-400 system. That is my first point. Second point, that it can actually intercept many targets simultaneously and also neutralize many targets simultaneously, and does not, as such, its capability does not decrease depending upon the target. For example, it can neutralize a drone also, a fighter jet also, a missile also, all of that simultaneously. So it can intercept many threats together, and it can neutralize many of those threats simultaneously. That is my second point I'm going to write. That number of targets, number of threats, it can intercept and neutralize. Third is that air defense system cannot work without radars. It goes without saying that पहले तो आपको monitor करना है ना कि आपके sky में कोई threat है कि नहीं, उसके लिए आपको radars चाहिए. So S-400 system deploys one of the most sophisticated long-range tracking radar system. That it involves a long-range tracking radar system, which can, again, as I told you, it can intercept as far as 400 kilometer away, right? It also includes various types of missiles that I am going to write. Missiles which can neutralize a target very far away, but also very closer to it. So it is not just a missile system, S-400. It is a proper air defense system. That missile तो बहुत important part है ही, but radars भी equally important part है. कि first we have to know the presence of threat and then we have to neutralize it. So on all of those parameters we can talk about that it is superior to other air defense system such as Patriot or THAAD or Iron Dome of Israel. Right? तो आप और थोड़ा सा briefly आप current affairs का context पक्के से या तो introduction में ना तो conclusion में पक्के से देना ही देना चाहिए that India is buying this system from Russia, and there is a debate going on in US House of Senate that should economic sanctions be imposed on India under CAATSA Act. तो अगर आप एक current affairs का context देते हो, then examiner knows that you are an aware candidate, right? So there is a reason why this question has been asked, and I am writing that particular reason in my answer itself. So either in the introduction or in the conclusion, definitely provide the context because of which this particular question has been asked in examination. Any question in any of the topics, any of the questions from 2021? In 2020, there were 4 questions from science and technology. This was a very simple question. As I told you, that UPSC does pick some keywords from the syllabus and they ask a question from that keyword itself. What do you understand by nanotechnology and how is it helping in health sector? नैनो टेक्नोलॉजी आपके सिलेबस में दे रखा है. यूपीएससी ने 2 बार क्वेश्चन पूछा है इस पे, एक बार 2015 में पूछा था या 16 में पूछा था और एक बार 2020 में पूछा है. तो एवरी 2-3 इयर्स कोई ना कोई कीवर्ड वो पिक करेंगे और उस पर एक सिंपल सा क्वेश्चन बनाएंगे. क्वेश्चन बहुत मुश्किल भी नहीं होगा. तो इसके 2 पार्ट हैं, दोनों पार्ट को आपको सेपरेटली डील करना है. इन द फर्स्ट पार्ट यू विल टॉक अबाउट दैट नैनो टेक्नोलॉजी फंडामेंटली इट्स साइंस एंड इंजीनियरिंग एसोसिएटेड विथ nanomaterials, nanosystems, and when I'm using the word nano, then I'm talking about dimension of about 1 to 100 nanometer, right? That is what we are going to write in the very first part of answer. That we are talking about science and engineering involving nanomaterials. That is materials with dimension of about 1 to 100 nanometer, where 1 nanometer is 10 to the power minus 9 meter. तो ये तो एक डेफिनेशन है, बट खाली डेफिनेशन लिखने से काम नहीं चलेगा. आपको थोड़ा बहुत बताना पड़ेगा कि ये जो डायमेंशन है वो इतना इंटरेस्टिंग क्यों है. तो आप ये बताओगे that when we take a bulk material, then bulk materials have trillions of atoms and molecules. When I'm taking nanomaterial, then they have perhaps few hundred, few thousands of atoms. This decrease in number of atoms fundamentally changes the property of my material. So the same material, the type of physical, chemical or biological properties it exhibits at macro scale, at micro, at nano scale, the properties fundamentally change. कि जो material का physical characteristic है, जैसे the color is a physical characteristic. Or conductivity, that is a physical characteristic. And as well as chemical characteristic, that nanomaterials become much more chemically reactive because of increased surface area. We should write that. And even biological characteristic can change. A lot of nanomaterials can become bioactive materials. So that is how we are going to write the first part of the answer, that at nanoscale, the physical, chemical and biological properties of materials change fundamentally compared to the same material at bulk scale. Because of that, we can now use those very small materials for various types of applications in many areas, including healthcare. That is how I am going to transition from first part to second part. जैसे आप first part में लिख सकते हो that nanotechnology has many applications in, let's say, environmental remediation, or in electronics, or in many areas, defense also, and finally also into healthcare. मुझे बाकी के areas के बारे में कुछ नहीं लिखना है, but I have to talk about healthcare. Now healthcare में there are 4-5 applications you should definitely write. The first and the most prominent one is targeted drug delivery. That अभी क्या होता है कि if I am not well, then I take a medicine. That medicine is not targeted to a particular site. I am dependent upon body's mechanism, that it is going to deliver the therapeutic effect of that medicine at a particular site. जैसे if I am not well, if let's say for example some tissues are damaged, then those tissue damage has occurred at some localized area. With the help of nanotechnology, we can deliver medication at this localized area. So this is called targeted drug delivery. We can talk about that. We can talk about that with the help of targeted drug delivery, how nanotechnology has a lot of potential to cure some serious diseases such as cancer. जैसे I should tell you that जो gold nanoparticles हैं, सोना जो है, सोना का जो nanoparticle है gold का, that has lot of potential to eliminate cancerous cell, tumor cell in the body. That we can write. We can also talk about that because of such small system, we can do manipulation at genetic scale. So nanotechnology has a lot of application in gene editing. We can talk about that how nanotechnology has enabled our diagnostic tools. They have become much better at finding the internals of our body. We can talk about that how nanotechnology, let's say for example, is also helping in killing resistant bacteria. A lot of bacteria which have developed resistance against antibiotics, they cannot be killed with antibiotics, but they can be killed with some type of nanomaterials. So there are many ways we can talk about that how nanotechnology is helping in healthcare sector. So that was my initial point when I started the class, that जो भी keywords syllabus के दे रखे हैं, I should definitely know about all of them. I should be able to write a very basic definition, and I should know that how a particular technology can have applications into various areas. जैसे biotechnology में भी देखो question क्या था, what are the fields of applied biotechnology and how it can help poorer section of the society. Nanotechnology application in healthcare. आप पिछले और साल के question उठा के देख लो, you will find many questions like this. So this was a very simple question. Now this question was a very expected question in 2020. This is again a question, contextual question. उस साल के लिए बहुत ज़्यादा important है. COVID-19 pandemic has caused unprecedented devastation worldwide, right? Exam occurred in November or December. Lockdown had started in March. However, technological advancements are being availed readily to win over the crisis. Give an account of how technology was sought to aid management of the pandemic. अब देखो ये जो क्वेश्चन है यहाँ पे बस एक पिटफॉल जो स्टूडेंट्स क्या करेंगे, that they will mainly focus on the treatment part or the healthcare part, that how technology is helping in healthcare. जैसे for example how we can diagnose people or we can treat people or how vaccine is being developed, वो pitfall है. So because the question was not just about healthcare, to aid management of the pandemic. So when I am talking about the management of pandemic itself, healthcare is of course the most important thing, but it is not the only thing. For example, think about, जैसे आप पहले तो आप एक brief background दोगे COVID-19 pandemic का, आप इंडिया में लॉकडाउन की बात कर सकते हो. All of those things you can also give some figure that how many people have died or how many people have been infected, something like this across the world also, just to give a more context to the very first statement which is given in the question. So if you have some figure here, definitely write that. Then jump to despite all of those challenges, we have technological advancements which is helping in managing this pandemic in following ways. That is how I am going to transition from the introduction to my main part of the answer. Again, look, this is a 15 marker question. लिखा नहीं है मैंने, but a 250 words का question है. The very first thing, that when lockdowns occurred, the management of lockdown, right? Second, in contact tracing, that how many people you have come in contact with. जैसे think about the आरोग्य सेतु app. आरोग्य सेतु ऐप था ना, so आरोग्य, I'm forgetting the name also, it seems like distant past but ज़्यादा पुराना है भी नहीं. So आरोग्य सेतु app, that how it can help in, let's say, contact tracing, how you can know that if you are vulnerable to this disease or not, how many people you have come in contact with who are suffering from the same disease without divulging the identity of patient. So we can talk about that, right? We can talk about that patients who are suffering, who already have COVID-19 pandemic. Remember, शुरू में बहुत ज़्यादा knowledge भी नहीं था. There was a lot of stigma here. So there were isolation wards and a lot of people feared going into isolation ward, including healthcare officials. So a lot of time to manage such wards, people used robots, that we are going to use robots to deliver food or essential supplies. That is also an aspect of technology. Because of lockdowns, the education and the work, it shifted into online mode. That occurred because of information technology, that people, for example, I remember for 1 year, I took just online classes. Was anyone from here who took online classes? I remember एक साल बस घर पे screen लगा हुआ है. I also did not like it. Right, I'm very sure that students also did not like it, but nonetheless we had no other option. So we still had classes, education going on. We still had normal healthcare going on. For example, I have a Practo app. I can book an appointment with doctor with a video call, right? For example, I became father during pandemic. When the pandemic was going on, and in month of April, the first lockdown, and I became father. So we had this good news, but nonetheless, this was a very scary situation that there is no one on the road when we are going to the hospital. But it was possible that a lot of time doctor did not agree to the appointment, but we're still able to talk to the doctor with the help of video call, right? So that is amazing. So it is not just about the management of pandemic itself, but it is also about that how, despite a lot of difficulty, life continued with the help of technology. Remote work occurred, remote education work, online education occurred, all of those things, we can talk about that. Then of course we have to talk about healthcare, that despite the fact that we had no treatment initially, we still were able to manage the symptoms for many patients. Yes, a lot of people died without any doubt, but we were able to manage symptoms of a lot of patients. Second, very soon we also were developed, अभी अगर मुझे आंसर लिखना हो तो I will also talk about that vaccine जो generally 8-10 साल लगता है. We were able to develop vaccine in about 1.5 years. We can talk about that also. We can also talk about that how with the help of technology, lot of essential things. Think about PPE kit, masks, which were in rare supply in the month of April or May of 2020, and by the month of September, October, there was no scarcity of any of those things. So how much production was scaled up all across the world, including India, that again occurred because of technology. And last but not the least, all of us were aware about that what is happening in rest of the world, and especially what is happening in rest of the country because of online media, that we know what steps is being taken by government of India, or what type of problems are occurring in different part of the country. So we were aware about things because of mass media, that is again because of technology. So that is also something we can write, that how technology was used to manage this pandemic. So if I have to write this answer, my only, in general, by the way, it is not just for this particular answer, but in general, remember that if there is a general question, try to add many dimensions. Do not make your answer unidimensional. Try to analyze a particular question from various dimensions. When you analyze it from various dimensions, आपको automatically बहुत सारे point निकल के आ जाएंगे. अगर आप बहुत एक particular constricted point of view से देखोगे तो बहुत सारे points आएंगे भी नहीं. नहीं, बिल्कुल भी नहीं, नहीं, ये क्वेश्चन बड़ा ऑप्टिमिस्टिक सा क्वेश्चन है. ये बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट है. इस क्वेश्चन में कुछ भी कोई क्रिटिकल एग्जामिनेशन कुछ भी नहीं है. दिस क्वेश्चन इज, आप वर्डिंग देखो ना, दैट यस लॉट ऑफ पीपल हैव डाइड, हाउएवर The very first statement के बाद, however technological advancements are being availed readily to win over the crisis, give an account of how technology was sought to aid management of the pandemic. So this question acknowledges that yes, tragedy is going on, but fundamentally the theme of the question is on some optimistic manner, that technology is helping us. How is it helping us? You just have to provide an information about it. So in this question, you do not have to write as such negatives of technology or something like this. Question 3, how is science interwoven deeply with our lives? What are the striking changes in agriculture triggered by the science-based technology? अब ये देखो दो बिल्कुल अलग थीम है. Generally question का एक थीम होता है, but these are two different themes. That is why my answer is also going to be in two different parts. The first part, how is science deeply interwoven with our life? I do not have to write this answer. If I give you this assignment in 5 minutes, you can write 200 words in a very simple manner. That how lot of things, how science is interwoven with our life. Starting from the very first time you woke up and you have mobile phones. That is again an element of technology. Now those mobile phones, it's not a good thing by the way, if the very first thing you use is mobile phones, but nonetheless, it is part of our life. So those mobile phones have lot of aspects of technology. It is material science, it is communication technology, electronics engineering, computer science, lot of things are part of that particular piece of technology. How we are using that, other areas, the type of food you eat. Think about the processed food, or for that matter, any type of food you eat with nutrition, that is because of technology, right? How you get aware about rest of the world, perhaps watching television or perhaps reading newspaper, again that is also some aspect of technology. So in each and every aspect of life, I don't think there is any dearth of point here. We can talk about that, how biotechnology is helping us, how information communication technology is helping us, how even space technology is helping us in our day-to-day life. We can talk about all of those things with various examples in the first part of the answer. Right? तो पहला पार्ट बस आप ये करोगे, आप बताओगे कि how science is deeply interwoven with our life. Second part is more specific, and this is again a very popular theme for UPSC. That forget, ये तो overall पूछ रखा है, जैसे 2019 में क्वेश्चन आया था that how can biotechnology help the increase the income of farmer. Just one line question, 250 word, 15 marker. तो जो एग्रीकल्चर पे टेक्नोलॉजी का क्या एप्लीकेशन है, बहुत फेमस थीम है. तो देर आर मेनी वेज. थिंक अबाउट वेदर फॉरकास्ट, दैट विद द हेल्प ऑफ कम्युनिकेशन सैटेलाइट्स वी कैन प्रोवाइड इंफॉर्मेशन टू फार्मर्स अबाउट द वेदर कंडीशन. जैसे वी आर एक्सपेक्टिंग मानसून, राइट? मानसून अराइवल एंड हाउ based on the arrival date we also will get to have this information that in particular part of the country by what time we can expect rainfall. So accordingly farmers can make decision about cultivation. Second, precision farming, that application of agricultural input, how much fertilizer, how much pesticide, how much water, with the help of GPS technologies, with the help of communication technology, it is possible in case of precision farming. Third, use of biotechnology, genetically modified crops or biofertilizers or biopesticides. So even for organic farming, it does not have to be synthetic farming. Just for example, now we are making pesticides based on neem, right? We are making fertilizers based on algae. That is application of biotechnology. That even if I have to do organic farming, I can use technology, and those technologies are not based on synthetic inputs, but they are based on natural or biological inputs. So we can talk about that also, that how farmers, synthetic input bhi aap likh sakte ho, of course, that the perfect mixture of fertilizer, जैसे आप बात कर सकते हो soil health card scheme की, that how government has this scheme called soil health card where farmers can get to know that how much fertilizer in a particular soil for a particular crop is required completely free of cost. So we can talk about that also. So there are many ways we can write that how technology helps in agriculture. We can talk about again satellite-based communication. In precision farming, there are many technologies. We can talk about again robots. Think about use of drones for spraying pesticides or fertilizers, or use of drones in doing farming when climate is very harsh. We can talk about that also. तो यहाँ पे भी अगेन कोई डार्थ ऑफ पॉइंट्स नहीं है. द ओनली थिंग इज दैट हाउ वेल स्ट्रक्चर्ड यू आर एंड इन योर लिमिटेड वर्ड हाउ मेनी मोर पॉइंट्स यू कैन राइट. आप जितनी ज़्यादा चीज़ें एक्सप्लेन कर सकते हो लिमिटेड वर्ड लिमिट में, लिमिटेड वर्ड्स में, उतना ज़्यादा आपको मार्क्स मिलेगा. तो ये वो क्वेश्चंस हैं जो सब लोग लिख के आएंगे. ये कोई नहीं छोड़ेगा इस क्वेश्चन को. बट द ओनली थिंग इज दैट हाउ वेल स्ट्रक्चर्ड यू आर, हाउ रेलेवेंट योर एग्जाम्पल्स आर, ऑल ऑफ दोज थिंग्स आर गोइंग टू गिव यू मोर एंड मोर मार्क्स. तो ये जो क्वेश्चंस है यहाँ पे जो है आप स्ट्रक्चर खाली करके और एग्जाम्पल्स बढ़िया लिख के आप एक प्रॉपर एज ले सकते हो बाकी के कैंडिडेट से. लास्ट क्वेश्चन विच आई हैव टू डिस्कस, दिस कैन ऑल्सो बी कैटेगराइज्ड एज अ क्वेश्चन ऑफ एनवायरमेंट, बट nonetheless we have categorized it in science and technology, that describe the benefits of deriving electrical energy from sunlight in contrast to the conventional energy generation. What are the initiatives offered by our government for this purpose? दो पार्ट ऑफ क्वेश्चन है कि सनलाइट का कन्वेंशनल एनर्जी जनरेशन से क्या बेनिफिट है, गवर्नमेंट के क्या इनिशिएटिव हैं. बोथ ऑफ देम आर अगेन वेरी इजी. देयर आर मेनी बेनिफिट्स, नॉट वन ऑफ देम. तो वी कैन राइट दिस. I think there can be 2-3 types of structure in this particular answer. For example, a very simple structure, because it is asking you a comparison, I can always make a table. तो एक तो हम यही कर सकते हैं कि हम एक टेबल बना सकते हैं कि conventional energy versus solar energy. Or if I do not want to make table, if let's say for example I am not very comfortable in it, then again in the bullet point, that is my first structure. The second structure is that in the bullet points itself, first I will define what do I mean by conventional energy and what do I mean by solar energy in the introduction, and in the main part, side by side, for example in the first line I wrote about conventional energy and then I compared that with solar energy. That is also a very valid structure. Or there can be a third structure also, where briefly I talked about both of the energy sources, but I mainly highlighted the issues associated with conventional energy in the first part of the answer, and in second part of the answer I highlighted that how solar energy overcomes all of those issues. I think all three of them are perfectly fine structure. इसमें कुछ भी ये नहीं है कि एक बेटर है या दूसरा बेटर है. आपको जो भी अडॉप्ट करना है, अब तीनों में कोई भी अडॉप्ट करो, बट जो पॉइंट्स हैं वो सेम होंगे. Conventional energy uses coal, petroleum, these are fossil fuel based sources. These fossil fuel are fundamentally carbon, they are basically biomass. Biomass which was stored millions of years ago when the concentration of carbon dioxide was very different in atmosphere. That biomass is not contributing anything to carbon cycle. हम क्या कर रहे हैं, हम उसको निकाल के जला रहे हैं. We are now adding more and more carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. So the very first thing you have to highlight, compare is that ये जो fossil fuel burning है, जो conventional source of energy है, that has very high carbon footprint. Because of that, we are witnessing the issues of global warming, climate change. Solar energy does not have very high carbon footprint. Overall, solar industry will have some carbon footprint, for example, manufacturing of panels and all of those things. But जो energy production है, उसका carbon footprint नहीं है. जो energy production है, उसका carbon footprint almost zero है. So that is what we can write in the very first point. Second point, that it is जो conventional source of energy है, that will be exhausted. So even though it is not environment friendly at all, that in itself, by the way, is a good reason that we should look for other sources of energy such as solar energy. But there is another very good reason that we should look for solar energy or other sources of energy, because ये जो coal petroleum है आने वाले 100 साल में खत्म हो जाएगा. जितना हमको पता है, जितने sources हमको पता है, उसके हिसाब से 100 साल तक है हमारे sources. तो 100 साल बाद हमको ऐसे भी कुछ ना कुछ alternative sources देखना है. And in that case, solar energy is a very good source. It is a renewable source of energy, inexhaustible source of energy for billions of years. We do not have to worry about that this energy will be depleted. A billion years to बहुत ज़्यादा है. We only may live, I don't know how long humanity is going to survive on this planet. But we do not have to worry about our energy requirement if we are using solar energy. It is an unlimited source of energy for us. For us, whatever solar energy we receive, it is unlimited. It is only about how we actually effectively utilize it. तो ये हम लिखेंगे. पहला पॉइंट मेरा क्या है कि conventional source of energy has high carbon footprint causing global warming, climate change. Solar energy does away with this problem. दूसरा पॉइंट, conventional energy is non-renewable. It will be exhausted in near future. Solar energy will not be exhausted in near future. Third point, conventional source of energy is highly polluting. Think about air pollution in India. Air pollution has a lot of factors. One of the most important factors are all this coal-based thermal power plant and this automobile exhaust. Both of them are using conventional source of energy. If we are using solar energy, you do not contribute anything to air pollution. चाहे वो solar thermal technology हो, चाहे वो photovoltaic cell हो, दोनों के केस में आप pollution में contribute नहीं कर रहे हो. तो ये third point जो है वो हम ये लिखेंगे कि how it can be beneficial. You can talk about environmental sustainability as my fourth point, that using solar energy is much more environmentally sustainable. Fifth point, you can talk about energy security, that if you are producing a lot of energy from sun, which by the way India is in tropical region, we do not have to worry about that global energy supply जो है वो कैसे डिस्टर्ब हो रहा है या कौन से फैक्टर से डिस्टर्ब हो रहा है. इफ वी कैन प्रोड्यूस लॉट ऑफ सोलर एनर्जी इन इंडिया, देन वी कैन शील्ड आवर सेल्फ फ्रॉम द ग्लोबल फ्लक्चुएशन ऑफ ट्रेडिशनल फॉसिल फ्यूल मार्केट. तो ये भी हम लिखेंगे कि एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी के लिए भी सोलर एनर्जी बहुत ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है. सो देर आर लॉट ऑफ पॉइंट्स वी कैन टॉक अबाउट, स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम टैकलिंग environmental issues, environmental sustainability, the fact that it is renewable, the fact that in India can become energy secure, the fact that it is not polluting. All of those parameters can be written down either side by side in a tabular form or in point form or separately also. All three of them are perfectly fine. But the next part hai, again you can give a context, that you can give this context that because of the fact that we are again dependent upon import, and because of the fact that India has promised to the world that we are going to become carbon neutral by 2070, or because of the fact that we are a responsible nation, it makes a lot of sense that we produce most of our energy from renewable sources such as solar. And in this context there are a lot of initiatives. The most famous one you are going to talk about will be National Solar Mission. जो इसका इनिशियल टारगेट था वो था कि 100 गीगावाट ऑफ इलेक्ट्रिसिटी बाय 2022. We haven't fulfilled this target. We are able to produce about 57 gigawatt by 2022. However, as of now we have revised this target to 300 gigawatt by 2030. तो ये फिगर पता होना चाहिए. जो सोलर एनर्जी को लेके जो भी हमारे मिशन है, ये फिगर इंपॉर्टेंट फिगर है, ये हमको पक्के से पता होना चाहिए. सो वी आर गोइंग टू राइट अबाउट दैट व्हाट इज आवर एम्बिशन एज ऑफ नाउ. टू अचीव दिस वी हैव लॉट ऑफ स्कीम्स. फॉर एग्जांपल, जैसे बहुत फेमस जो स्कीम है वो है सोलर रूफटॉप स्कीम. कि हम छतों पे पैनल्स लगाएंगे. एक तो तरीका ये है कि आप एक बहुत बड़े एरिया में काफ़ी सारे सोलर पैनल लगाओ एंड प्रोड्यूस लॉट ऑफ एनर्जी. दैट विल रिक्वायर लैंड एक्विजिशन, विल बी टाइम टेकिंग. छतों पे लगा लो. नाउ इट हैज़ डबल बेनिफिट दैट लेट्स से फॉर एग्जांपल इन दिस पर्टिकुलर बिल्डिंग whatever energy requirement I have, maybe I can fulfill it from solar panel. And by the way, if this building is connected to the electricity grid, then maybe sometimes my energy requirement is not fulfilled by those panels, so I can receive that energy from normal grid. Or maybe sometimes I am producing extra energy, I can supply energy to the grid. I will be charged as per this net supply or whatever I consumed. Or if let's say for example I actually contributed to the grid, then I will be financially rewarded. इसको लेके भी government का initiative है. We can talk about that. Net metering, that I will only be charged for the amount I have actually consumed using normal grid, or I can also be financially rewarded if I am actually supplying electricity to the grid. We can talk about that. We have solar parks. तो एक तो rooftop scheme है, but we also have solar park scheme, that we are acquiring land, especially into those areas where there is a lot of potential for solar energy production, and in that land we are installing solar panels so that we can produce huge amount, hundreds of megawatts of energy just from one location, and we have to connect that to the grid. So that is also which we talk about. We can talk about PM Kusum scheme. That's a very good point. that farmers का जो irrigation requirement है, जो water pumps के लिए जो electricity चाहिए, we can use solar panels for that. So for irrigation requirement, farmers are being incentivized under this scheme that they can use solar panels or more and more solar energy to invest into irrigation for their water pumps. तो एक लाइन में आप इसका ऑब्जेक्टिव एक्सप्लेन करोगे और बताओगे कि how solar panels are working for that. We have a scheme called Surya Mitra scheme. That जैसे जैसे solar energy, solar panels, solar photovoltaic or solar thermal technology, as their penetration increases, we also need people with proper skill set that कोई भी अगर problem होता है तो they can take care of those problem. So we need skilled people here. तो जो सूर्य मित्र है, that is a skill development program where students will be provided required skill for management of any solar based technology. So we can talk about that also. And by the way, do not limit yourself to the just national scheme. For example, think about International Solar Alliance. आप इसका भी एक background दे सकते हो that in 2015, along with Paris Agreement, International Solar Alliance was also announced, a joint collaboration between India and France, which aims to incentivize solar energy production all across the world, especially in developing nation. We can talk about that, or we can also talk about One Sun, One World, One Grid initiative, right? So even though this is a global initiative, it was actually envisaged by India. Our Prime Minister announced this as early as, in fact, 2017 or 18, I guess. And as of now, it has been adopted by International Solar Alliance, and many agencies such as World Bank, they have actually adopted that there's something like this we have to work towards. तो ये सारे initiatives, बहुत सारे initiatives हैं, we can talk about all of them or at least some of them within our word limit. But don't just write the name, because again remember it is a 250 word question. Don't just write the name. Also try to explain in one line that what are the objectives of this particular scheme, right? So that's it. We are done with all of the questions from the previous 3 years. If you have any doubt, any questions regarding science and tech or regarding in general about preparation, you can go ahead and ask. Which scheme? FAME is for electric vehicles. Electric vehicles जो है, yes, they do need energy. That energy can come from solar energy, but no, I will not include FAME here. FAME जो है, अगर electric vehicle पे कोई question होता, तो हम, या again pollution पे भी अगर question होता, तब हम FAME scheme लिख सकते थे. यहाँ पे लिखने की जरूरत नहीं है. If you have, by the way, any doubt, you can always send me a mail also. All the best, guys.